The Ghost of the Potomac, the man who owned Washington. On a humid night in 1865, as the smoke of the Civil War still choked the American soul, a man sat in a dimly lit basement in Washington, D.C., counting the secrets of a nation. He wasn't the president. He wasn't a general. He was Lafayette Baker, the head of the first U.S. Secret Service, a man so feared that even Abraham Lincoln's cabinet looked away when he entered a room. But Baker held a secret far more dangerous than treason. He knew exactly where the Confederate treasury, millions in gold bullion, had vanished. This is the true story of the greatest treasure hunt in American history, a web of spies, assassins, and a fortune that remains buried in the red clay of the South. Chapter 1. The Shadow Weaver. Lafayette Baker did not exist on paper. In the 1860s, if you were a gambler, a spy, or a blockade runner, Baker was the monster under your bed. He was a tall, lean man with eyes like polished flint and a beard that seemed to hide a permanent, cynical sneer. When the Civil War broke out, Washington, D.C. was a sieve. Secrets leaked out of the War Department like water through a rusted bucket. General Winfield Scott needed a man who didn't care about rules, ethics, or the Geneva Convention. He found Baker. Baker's first mission was legendary. He walked straight into Richmond, the heart of the Confederacy, disguised as an itinerant photographer. He was arrested, interrogated by Jefferson Davis himself, and somehow, through sheer bravado and lies, convinced the rebels he was a simple artist. He returned to D.C. with the locations of every Southern battery along the Potomac. Lincoln gave him a badge, the War Department gave him a budget, and Baker gave himself the power of a god. Chapter 2. The Midnight Bureau. By 1863, Baker had created the National Detective Police. Based out of 217 Pennsylvania Avenue, his men were known as Baker's Rangers. They didn't need warrants. They didn't need evidence. If Baker thought you were a Southern sympathizer, you disappeared into the old Capitol prison. But while Baker was cleansing the city of spies, he was also watching the gold. The American economy was fracturing. The North had greenbacks, but the South was desperate. Rumors began to swirl in the high society balls of D.C. that the Confederate government was consolidating its wealth not in paper, but in Mexican gold pieces, English sovereigns, and raw silver bars. Chapter 3. The Flight of the Treasury. Fast forward to April 1865. Richmond is burning. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, realizes the end has come, but he doesn't leave empty-handed. Under the cover of darkness, a train pulls out of the Richmond station. On board are several heavy wooden crates marked records. They weren't records. They were the entire remaining wealth of the South, estimated at roughly $500,000 in 1865 value, over $100 million in today's purchasing power. Here is where the history books get blurry and where Lafayette Baker enters the fray. Baker had spies everywhere. He knew the train was moving. He knew the destination was Danville, Virginia, and then perhaps south to Georgia. While the world focused on the surrender at Appomattox, Baker's eyes were on the gold. Chapter 4. The Lincoln Assassination Conspiracy. Then the world stopped. April 14th, 1865. Ford's Theater. A single shot from John Wilkes Booth changed history. Lafayette Baker was the man tasked with finding Booth. He led the manhunt that eventually cornered the assassin in a tobacco barn in Virginia. But here is the extraordinary part that remains a point of debate among historians. Baker claimed to have found Booth's diary. When the diary was finally produced in court during the conspiracy trials, 18 pages were missing. Who tore them out? Baker. Why? Because the diary allegedly contained names of high-ranking Northern officials who were in league with the South and who were tracking the Confederate gold. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Act. As the Southern leadership fled through the woods of Georgia, the treasure began to leak. At a river crossing near the Chenault plantation, the gold was divided. Some was given to the remaining soldiers as back pay, some was hidden in the floorboards of local houses, but a massive portion, nearly 200 pounds of gold, simply vanished. Lafayette Baker, despite being a Union hero, was suddenly living a very lavish lifestyle. He was seen in New York investing in shipping lines. He bought expensive property, yet officially he was just a government employee on a modest salary. Chapter 6. The Poisoned End. The establishment grew tired of Baker. He knew too much. He had blackmailed too many senators. He had stolen too much from the seized Southern estates. In 1868, Lafayette Baker died under incredibly suspicious circumstances. He was only 41 years old. His death certificate said meningitis, but his family insisted he had been poisoned. Decades later, a chemical analysis of his hair samples, preserved by his descendants, showed lethal levels of arsenic. Baker died taking the location of the Golden Ghost to his grave. The mystery today: why this matters to Americans. To this day, treasure hunters in Georgia and Virginia use high-tech LIDAR and ground-penetrating radar to search for the lost Confederate gold. In 2018, the FBI actually conducted a secret dig in Dents Run, Pennsylvania, looking for a lost shipment of Union gold from the same era that Baker was rumored to have intercepted. They found nothing, or so they say. The story of Lafayette Baker isn't just a story of a spy. It's a story of how the modern American intelligence state was born in a crucible of greed, gold, and gunpowder.